And welcome, everybody. I'm Peter Christian. That is the one and only John King over there. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Peter.
And we have with us a very special guest, one of our favorite people in studio with us, the fun-loving guy. This is Traolach O'Riordan from the Irish Studies Program.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning, John. It's great to be here.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So now
I'm writing my name out here, and I'm actually having a difficulty doing it.
Now, I understand that there is some sort of Irish-themed holiday coming up this week that we probably should pay attention to.
Well, it's not a holiday. I'd call it a holiday month myself. It's the month of the Irish. It's March.
Okay.
You mentioned spring. That's what St. Patrick's Day is about.
Right.
Springtime, And when I grew up in Ireland, it was one of my favourite holidays because after Christmas, you were looking forward to St. Patrick's Day. It was a big family holiday and event, and it marked the end of winter and the coming of spring. So it was a great time for joy and celebration.
I'm really glad you brought that up because here in America, we have our own, Americanized version of St. Patrick's Day. But what is it really like in the originating country of Ireland?
Well, what it used to be like, because we didn't have parades in Ireland until the early 1900s. That was an American invention, and we borrowed it then from the Irish Americans. But it was like a Thanksgiving. So you'd get up in the morning, you'd go to Mass, you'd have a big clump of shamrock, the shamrock representing the Trinity, God the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Then you come home, have some breakfast. Then you go down to the parade with your father, and my mom would make dinner, and then you'd have the families coming in that evening, and you'd have a big family dinner that evening, and you'd have, aunts and uncles and different things.
Was it always corned beef and cabbage?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. All right.
No, it was generally kind of a roast. Not to say that we didn't eat corned beef and cabbage. We did eat corned beef and cabbage, but it wasn't associated specifically with St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
But what it was a big family get-together, and you'd have, aunts and uncles, and they'd have a big feed, and then they'd sit down, they'd drink, and they'd smoke, and they'd tell stories, and they'd sing songs. This could be going till 2 or 3 in the morning. But that's what it was. It was a bit like Thanksgiving. But I think it's more like what we have over here now. That's kind of gone in Ireland as well. It's more like about going out, going to parades and going drinking, which is unfortunate because the family focus is kind of gone, and really that's what it was about. It was about St. Patrick, obviously, and the coming of Christianity to Ireland, but then built around that was the whole emphasis on family and family life and celebration of, all the gifts you had received.
Well, since we got you here in the studio, and it is St. Patrick's Day, tell us a little bit about the myths of St. Patrick's Day. Tell us tell us about Pelagianism and all this stuff that gets involved in this little story here.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, the idea that St. Patrick is Irish is not true. He's not Irish. Chances are he was Welsh, and he was brought as a slave to Ireland, and he actually was a slave to a Druid, so he came to know Celtic religion, but Celtic religion was not really that distinct from Christianity because the Celts had a philosophical tradition, and they were very advanced philosophically anyway, and their main concern was the pursuit of truth, very similar to what Plato talked about. And when they came into contact with Christianity, the question became not what was truth, but who was truth. So this was very, very exciting. So they started borrowing in from their contacts with the Roman Empire through slaves, through texts, through interaction with missionaries, more and more Christianity. But what emerged from it, because the Celts believed that the soul was immortal, and the purpose of the soul was the pursuit of truth. They had also this belief in reason and the idea of an objective moral code, and a belief that the life you would live after you died was determined by the extent to which you adhere to that moral code. They didn't believe in sanctifying grace or the need for Christ, and this comes out in the teachings of Pelagius, who says there's no such thing as original sin. Well, hang on a second. If there's no such thing as original sin, then there's no need for Christ. And when his teachings, which he does put into a kind of a systematic order, are promoted, then the Pope responds by organising a synod called the Synod of Troy. And then he sent first Palladius, but secondly St. Patrick, to the Irish who believed in Christ, so they weren't pagans. And then when you look at St. Patrick with the snakes, and you think of the Garden of Eden. Well, who was a snake in the Garden of Eden? Well, that entity that was trying to take those who were faithful to God from God. So those snakes represent the heretics. So that's what St. Patrick drives out, are the heretics. There were never any snakes, and they're not ones that crawled in their belly. There's plenty two-legged snakes, but none of the other kind.
So basically, you have a fight here between two theological systems, between St. Patrick representing a philosophy of or
Orthodoxy.
theology of grace and orthodoxy in Catholicism, and this Pelagianism system, which is heaven through works, basically.
Yeah, basically, that's exactly what it is.
So that doesn't really get to the bar scene in Ireland or America anymore.
No, it shouldn't have either. That's really what happens, though. That starts to happen in the 18th century, because, as you know, they had a system in Ireland which was like the Jim Crow laws, like the penal laws. So if you were Catholic, couldn't get an education, couldn't hold land, couldn't have commissions, this kind of stuff. So there was a huge, they were like outcasts in their own country. But it's funny, it was in America then, and primarily led by Protestants, Scotch-Irish, like who saw the injustices of all of this, that first used St. Patrick's Day as a platform to draw attention to the injustices in Ireland, because they were revolutionary. They mostly came from the Scotch Presbyterian tradition. And they were revolutionary. They were very anti-English as well, because they themselves had also suffered discrimination under the English, because Ireland was made up of three theological groups of three nations. You had the Anglicans, who were the dominant group. They had the land, they had the capital, they had the political power. Then you had the Presbyterians in the north, very industrious and so forth, but they were disliked by the Anglicans, and for good reason, because the Presbyterians killed the Anglican king, and they were seen as revolutionary, which is true.
These are my people.
Yeah. So they discriminated against them. You had a huge flight out of Ireland then from about 1717, about 100,000 of them left in the space of 2 years. They come to America full of animosity towards England. And then the other group in Ireland were the Catholics. So when they come over here to America, they retain that anti-English sentiment, and that translates into their support for the Revolutionary War here, but also in a kind of a campaign to right the injustices in Ireland. And they use St. Patrick's Day to draw attention to the injustices. So St. Patrick's Day now develops a political platform. It becomes an event to bring people together and focus attention on what is happening in Ireland. It's then taken by the British, and the British use it as a recruiting tool. Okay, they're promoting their idea of a British identity, which is drawing on all the different ethnicities. So they've developed things like Scottish kilts and all of that, but they also use St. Patrick's Day to attach the Irish Catholics, who were also in the United States, and also Protestants, to the concept of British identity and heritage. So they organised the first St. Patrick's Day parade up in New York in the 1760s.
Wow.
And then it's taken from that on after independence, and it's made into a kind of a national Catholic day. But it draws all other groups as well. I mean, you look at the configuration of those parades. You had Germans and Austrians and French and so forth.
Now, let me ask you something. We're up against a break. I want to ask you something. Revolutionary War, was it in there somewhere, 1776?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you if during and after the Revolutionary War, if the Irish celebrations continued in America.
They did, but I mean, they had a huge impact in preserving that, because it was a very strong pro-British sentiment and a kind of a separation anxiety among a lot of people here. Right. But what happens with the Scotch-Irish coming out of Ulster, they make sure that there is going to be no kind of reconciliation. They ensure that the revolution and the ideals of revolutions are protected during a period of 30 years. This is according to Drury anyway, who wrote about and a few other scholars who have researched the role of the Scotch-Irish in the creation of the American Republic.
Okay, hang on to that thought. We'll be right back. We have all three lines open if you'd like to jump in on the conversation. 721-1290. We'll be right back. And we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. That's the most Irish music I could find. It's short.
I don't know why you keep coming in here.
He's going, what the hell was that? Anyway.
I know I was coming in for a chastisement, but the kind of bizarre thing is I kind of look forward to it. I'm starting to worry about myself.
Oh, when you start doing disco on St. Patrick's Day, I'll know you're completely converted. But anyway, so you were right in the middle, and I interrupted you rudely, and I apologize.
No, you didn't interrupt me rudely at all. No, not at all. I can't remember what I was talking about.
We're talking about the revolution in America and whether or not the Irish had, kind of sided with the U.S. or sided with Britain, and how the St. Patrick's Day holiday fell out of that.
All right, yeah, but they had definitely sided with the U.S. I mean, the continent there was packed full of Irish, and a lot of them Scotch-Irish, but also the Southern Catholic Irish also. I mean, there was no love there for Britain. They had the experience of the injustices of living in Ireland under the British system. So they bought in fully into the promise that America America held for them, you know. So they did. They came out and supported, and they fought and died for the independence of this country. And after the Revolutionary War, there was, of course, one of the things about America is that revolutionary spirit also came to Ireland, and it kind of manifested itself in United Irishmen. And there was the United Irish Rebellion in 1798, and after that rebellion, again, thousands fled to America, and what they came was even a deeper hatred of Britain, and they ensured that there would be no kind of reconciliation with Britain. They retained a very strong anti-British sentiment in the country.
They probably arrived just in time to help out with the War of 1812 as well.
They participated in that as well. But I mean, you got to remember, about 25 of the presidents of this country were Irish. You know, and some of them Irish in birth, some are Irish in heritage.
Ronald Reagan
was, JFK was, going right back to the very beginning.
Sure.
You know, so they made a huge contribution to this country. And sometimes we kind of forget that. We kind of think of America as, you know, without looking at the kind of the configuration and the different ethnic groups and nationalities that have come to produce the nation that we know as America today. So, and there's a huge contribution, I suppose, by all groups to building this country into the country it has become.
Oh, it seems to me that Irish identity in America meshes so easily. I mean, yeah, we have like St. Patrick's Day and stuff like that, but in my day-to-day walk, I might see a bumper sticker with someone that says, "I'm Irish," or "Kiss me, I'm Irish," or something like that, but it doesn't come out all that much. It's not like a...
Well, not so much anymore. I mean, things have changed in America as well. I think the suburbanization of the country as well has kind of broken down the kind of ethnic individuality or distinction that was one time characteristic here. But I think if you think of Irish American, you're thinking of a concept here really that has two kind of fundamental ideas. You're Irish in your culture and you're American in your politics. You know, so you retain this loyalty to this heritage that you have, but at the same time, you give the assent to what the American Republic stands for as well. And this is very interesting because when you look at the how these things came together, because you look at America and the pursuit of liberty, well, this would have huge implications for Ireland. Because what happens in America is that you have that immigrant group, in particular after the famine, that look at preserving their own distinct culture. So all the movements to preserve Irish music, preserve Irish dance, preserve Irish language, preserve Irish games that came to basically dominate the landscape in Ireland and shape the course of Irish history had their origins in America. They all come out of America. In Ireland at the time, there was a pursuit of home rule, but America doesn't want home rule. They didn't want, like the Kennedys had that relationship with Britain. They wanted independence. They wanted liberty. This is what the Irish Americans embraced. So this cultural and political kind of ideas that coalesce here in America are now transferred back to Ireland into a cultural and political movement that wants to restore the traditional culture and achieve Irish independence, not home rule.
So it was America that provided a platform, if you will.
More than just a platform.
Yeah.
I mean, it had the experience. I mean, when Irish nationalist leaders came out here to America, everyone thinks they came out here fundraising. No, they didn't come out here just fundraising. They came out here to talk to the leaders of the Irish American community, the political parties, and so forth. Talk about things about how the judicial system was run here, how the democratic system was run here, how the actual state functioned. You know, they wanted to draw from the American experience and use that experience in the creation of a new Ireland. So yeah, if you want to talk about modern Ireland, without Irish America, there would have been no 1916 and probably no Irish independence. And we probably wouldn't have any Irish studies program up here either. No, because all the songs, traditional Irish music, they're all collected in the States and brought back. You know, an awful lot of them, not all of them, but a huge amount of them. And we forget that. I mean, P.J. Curtis came out a number of years ago, and there was Clare tunes that had left County Clare and gone to America with the immigration, weren't played anymore. And he remembered one when he was a kid, where a phonograph came home, and an old Irish tune, and there was an old fiddler about 80 years of age who recognised it. We used to play that here one time. He knew it. He hadn't heard it played in 60 years or something.
Wow.
You know, but it come back from America.
I want to ask you, you had said that the Irish identity in America was politically American and socially Irish. Did they export the American political ideals, and how did that look back to Ireland?
Well, I think you were going in that direction back in Europe anyway. I think America had a huge impact on the course of European history and, of course, the establishment of democracies and so forth. And this was what was happening in England, slowly but surely. But like the creation of the American Republic added further impetus to it, and now with the Irish American community, the idea is coming out from the Scotch Irish, and then with the Catholic Irish after the famine, saw the Irish identifying more and more with America, and less with Britain, and looking to America and the achievements of America in building their own kind of vision for the Ireland that they would like to create for themselves and for their children and grandchildren. So it had a huge impact, on Ireland. I mean, we forget that. And then I remember it came up first time when I was writing my thesis on cultural nationalism. I went into my supervisor and I said, we will not make any sense of the cultural nationalist movement in Ireland until we locate it in the context of Irish America. He said, how long more will it take for us to do that, or for you to do that? I said, about another 2 years. Forget about it. Sign off. You're done.
And with that, we're going to take another break. 721-1290. When we come back, you have a whole range of things to talk about celebrating St. Patrick's Day here in Missoula. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. Hey, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. John King, Traolach O'Riordan is with us from the Irish Studies program at the University of Montana. How am I doing?
You are doing great, Peter.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
great.
Thank you ever
but I'm
so
waiting
much.
for that Irish accent to
I'm
come
not,
at me.
I'm going to pour some milk on him.
I'm not doing it.
And we'll taste the rainbow.
I have too much respect for
Every
Traolach
time I come in here, Peter, you just tell me you're not doing it, and
Nope.
you just can't. It's just screaming to get out. You have to.
I'm not doing it. I am not doing it.
Even more important than hearing Peter's Irish brogue,
Really
we
horrible,
do want to
yeah.
check out what you have going on this week as far as events in Missoula.
All right, so we have the lead up to St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day now is on Tuesday the 17th. So we have a number of events that we have coming up that we want to kind of get people more involved in the cultural side of it all and get more and more people just out, involved in learning more about Irish culture, heritage, and so forth. So the first thing we have coming up is on Tuesday. I'm going to give a talk on St. Patrick. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on at St. Anthony's Parish Life Centre on 217 Tremont. That's Tuesday at 7:30. Then on Thursday at the Roxy, we're going to have two films. We have a kind of an Irish film night. The first one begins at 5:15. It's Song of the Sea, and it's based on a Celtic myth of the Selkie. It's an Oscar-nominated animated film, and it's ideal for kids. So it's $6 per person to get in for adults, but if you bring a family, it's $10 for adults. Then on Saturday is the big celebration. We don't have the parade on St. Patrick's Day itself. We have it on the Saturday, so we can give as many people as possible and kids the opportunity to participate in it. So we start the morning. These a Catholic saint. There's Mass at St. Francis Xavier Church at 8 o'clock. Then assembly for the parade is at 11, and the parade moves off at 12. Our Grand Marshal this year is Dan Combo, well-known doctor, and our Irishman and Irish woman are Jerry and Mrs. Tain. That afternoon, at 2:30, we have a hurling match, which is where 15 against 15 armed with sticks go out there and battle it out. So if you're feeling a bit of a chill and you need to get the blood coursing through your veins, don't bother with Irish whiskey. Go up and watch this. It is a cracker of a game. And then that night, at 6 o'clock at the Doubletree Edgewater, we have the great gathering of the Irish. That's when we bring everybody of Irish heritage together for our banquet and our silent and live auction, our celebration of Irish music and Irish dance and all that great stuff. It's a great night. We normally have somewhere between 300 and 400 people, and it really is a wonderful night. So do make an effort to come along to that. The following week on St. Patrick's Day, the 17th, there's a corned beef and cabbage feed over in St. Anthony's Parish Life Centre with Irish music and dance again. And then on Saturday in the UM Recital Hall, we have Liam O'Malley from the Hothouse Flowers going to close things out at 7:30 with a concert on the bodhrán, whistle and piano. It's kind of a mix of traditional and contemporary, and this guy is something else. Then on Sunday, we're having our drawing for our raffle, which is for a trip for two to Ireland.
30 seconds.
Okay, that raffle. If you want to help out the Irish Studies program and get to Ireland, buy a raffle ticket. You can get them at all news outlets, Rock and Rudy's, Thomas Mara Bar, Stone of Accord, and it all goes to help the Irish Studies program. They're $5 each. Book a 6 for $25. It's win-win-win.
It is always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Peter, John, thank you so much for having me here.
It's
always a delight. Thank you.
We're going to take a little break, come right back, and talk politics. Ladies and gentlemen, good old Montana politics. We will continue with Talk Back right after this timeout. And now another thing I've always wanted to say on the radio, Mr. Speaker, And Austin's going, what have I gotten myself into here? Austin Knudsen, good morning, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives at the Montana Legislature, Republican Austin Knudsen. Austin, first of all, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. A very eventful day for you folks on Friday.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I had the opportunity earlier.
If you want to be a real leader, Austin, you got to say, I read it in the newspaper just like everybody else did.
Right, yeah.
That's the Obama out there.
Yeah. I had the opportunity of visiting with Governor Bullock last week at St. Patrick Hospital, and he and Mayor John Engen and Jeff Fee with St. Patrick Hospital all waxing eloquent about how absolutely vital and important expanding Medicaid for 70,000 more people. It simply had to happen because, in the immortal words, it's the right thing to do. So, but I understand that the Republican majority in your committee said it was not the right thing to do. So, want to get your opinion on what happened and the vote and why was it do not pass?
Well, so a couple things. I mean, obviously, we're interested in doing right by the Montana taxpayers and by the Montana citizens. Medicaid has become a huge anchor around our state budget's neck. And so I think to get a good understanding of what the committee did, we have to have a good understanding of the numbers on what Medicaid costs Montana right now and what expansion would have cost us. Right now, it's $350 million bill per year to the state. And that number goes up. I mean, frankly, when the Affordable Care Act passed, those numbers jumped. It was lower than that 350. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, but I know what it is now. It's $350 million a year. And so what expansion would have done, we wouldn't have had to pay immediately, but based on legislative fiscal staff's analysis of this bill and what expansion would have done, we were basically talking 3 years from now, we would have started incurring over a 5-year period an additional $250 million in costs. So, you add up over a biennium, it's already costing us $700 million every 2 years. Now we're going to tack on another $250 million over another 5 years. I mean, this thing gets really expensive in a hurry. And that's assuming that the federal money stays in place.
Now, Austin, a lot of people will say, yeah, we'll be paying, in the future, 5 years or so, but also there's all this money from the federal government that will be pouring into Montana.
It's laying right there on the table. And as they said at this meeting, that's our money that other states are using. We should be using our money.
Well, I think technically we're a net beneficiary of federal funds, but
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that, Austin?
The
amount of money that's pouring into Montana, judged by the amount of money that Montanans would be putting into this Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, well, look, the notion and the argument that this is Montana tax dollars that are leaving the state and we're not getting back, that's just not the case. Montana is a beneficiary of tax dollars, not a payor of tax dollars. For every $1 of tax dollars we send, we get $1.40 back from the federal government. So this idea that we're somehow, the state of Montana is sending tax dollars away that we're not getting back, that's just not true. But guys, we have to come back to, and maybe it sounds like rhetoric, but this is truly the way I feel about it, and it's the way the majority of the Republican caucus feels about this. We've got a federal government that's $18 trillion in debt. And that's only the debt that you count. I mean, you're not even talking about unfunded liabilities from the federal side yet. That number gets a lot higher and very more scary than 18 trillion already is. But I mean, even if you just use that number, 18 trillion, the idea of $1 trillion is an unfathomable number. The fact that we are 18 trillion in debt in the federal government and we want to accept this quote unquote free federal money, to the tune of $700+ million, that nothing about that is fiscally responsible.
I wanted to step back just a second because when I interviewed you last Friday, we discussed, a little bit about the hearing that you held. And I don't think when we were talking that I certainly didn't know during that conversation that the the do not pass vote was going to hit. So later when that did hit, I wanted to ask you, what now? Obviously, the governor's bill is going to have a 3/5 majority or some inordinate number in order to go anywhere from now. So what are the plans in the works for dealing with an issue that you said needed to be taken care of? This gap, this population that's not being cared for right now.
Sure. Well, look, the Republican majorities are not here to just say no and go home. We recognize that there are some coverage gaps. There are some needy people in the state of Montana that do need a hand up. We've got House Bills 455 and 544. Those are carried by Representative Balance and Representative Whittick. Those will expand Medicaid on the state's dime. We will not be accepting any federal money with those bills. Those will expand Medicaid to some targeted populations. There are some veterans included in that. Now, veterans were never originally included under Medicaid. That's a new population, but we recognize that there are a population of veterans in the state of Montana that need help. We want to help them. That's an expansion that's being offered by us. Single working parents. Some of those, we've got a population of them included in these bills. Frankly, those are expensive bills from a Republican standpoint.
We have to go to a break here in a second, but when we get back, I'd like you to explain who would not be included in the Republican bills and why not.
Yeah, because the hue and cry is that, that magic number of 70, there are 70,000 Montanans that desperately need this health care, and they're underemployed, they're unemployed, they've been trying to find jobs, they can't get enough full-time employment. Why not just go ahead and accept the money, and like so many other states have done, and just make everybody happy? So we're going to come right back, continue visiting with Austin Knudsen. By the way, we have 2 lines open. If you'd like to visit with Austin, he's the Speaker of the House for the Montana legislature. If you have a word or two of encouragement, or perhaps you'd like to contest their vote, give us a call at 721-1290. Hey, it's Monday, and it's Talkback, and we have 2 lines open at 721-1290. John King's over there. I'm Peter Christian. Austin Knudsen, Speaker of the House of the Montana Legislature, joining us. We're talking about Medicaid. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and right before the break, I had asked Austin, what is the difference as far as who would be covered and who wouldn't be covered specifically in the Republican plans? What do you feel? And last time when I spoke with you on Friday, you had mentioned that by the governor's numbers, like nearly 1/5 of all Montanans is in poverty, and you seem to have some skepticism towards that. I wanted to get your idea on who would not be covered and why in the Republican plans.
Well, guys, I have to be perfectly honest with you. One of the curses about being the Speaker of the House is that I have to be a mile wide and an inch deep. To talk specifics on those 2 bills, I should probably get, schedule Representative Balance to be on the phone with you. She's really dove into these issues, and she obviously knows her bill inside and out. She could give you those specifics. I'm not able to.
Well, do you feel that the governor's bill would spend too much money on people that don't necessarily need it?
Well, look, I think you have to look at the numbers on Medicaid right now, and then what the governor's proposing, and I think that answers itself, and that question answers itself. And right now in Montana, we've got, we've got 150,000 approximately people in Montana enrolled in Medicaid. Now, we're a state with a population of about 1 million people, okay? So 150,000 right now. The governor's proposing to add another 70,000, okay? So by his own numbers, we're now at 220,000 people enrolled in Medicaid. That is that's more than 20% of the state's population that's now on this federal program that was meant to be targeted to small populations, to the disabled, to the aged, to the blind, to those people who truly need it. So what are we saying here with the governor's plan? Are we saying that we really believe 1 out of every 5 Montanans is in poverty and needs this new form of welfare? I don't buy it, and I think a majority of the Montanans don't. I think a majority, certainly in the Montana legislature, doesn't buy that.
Now, you had mentioned, too, during the break, that the way the whole process of politicking, if you will, goes in the legislature, that the Democrats, due to a rules fight before everything got started, came up with, you had said 6 magic bullets. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so we're going to get really inside baseball here. But from 30,000 feet, the Montana legislature is governed by rules. And each session, each House and Senate adopts its own rules. And those are the rules that govern, floor debate, committee procedure, floor procedure, all those things.
Or more famously, dress codes.
Nothing in the rules about dress codes,
Yes.
gentlemen. It's not
There you
there.
go. All right.
So what are
Good
the
one.
silver bullets in the rules?
Okay, so what happened? So normally in a committee, we have what we call the blast motion. A given committee can table a bill. Okay, which happens when the committee doesn't like the bill, they vote it down, they table it. So you hear in the news that bill was tabled in committee, it's likely dead. Well, because a bill is tabled, it's not dead. That bill can be blasted to the House floor. And that's done by floor motion when we're all 100 representatives are sitting in session on the floor. There's a motion made to blast X bill, which is tabled in committee, onto the floor for full debate and full vote.
And just so people understand, the committees are smaller groups of representatives, like 7 or 9?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the committee. Some of them are larger. Some of them are about 20 members. Some of them are, more like 12 or 15.
Oh, okay.
And they're structured in the same proportional numbers, Republicans and Democrats, as exists in the legislature. So right now we're approximately 60-40. It's 59-41, but percentage-wise, that's how it works out. Okay, so back to the blast motion. Normally, to blast a bill out of committee and onto the House floor, that takes a 3/5 vote. And that's been in the House rules, I mean, as long as I've been around, but, a lot longer than that. That's well-established precedent. That requires a 3/5 vote. What we had happen at the beginning of the session, because of some maneuvering and some politics, we ended up negotiating into the rules that each party, Republican and Democrat, would have 6 silver bullets that would allow a bill to be blasted to the floor with a majority vote and not a 3/5 vote.
Oh, okay.
So that tool is still on the table for either party to use. But again, that only applies to bills that have been tabled in committee and are bottled up in committee.
And that's what's happened to this bill, right? It was tabled.
No.
Oh.
No, this
No.
bill was not tabled. So what we've done here is this bill is actually coming to the floor, but it's coming to the floor with what we call an adverse committee report. Normally a bill comes to the floor with a recommendation from the committee that it do pass. This bill is coming to the floor with a recommendation from the committees of do not pass.
So in other words, the silver bullets won't apply because it's no longer in committee.
Correct.
So you dodged the silver bullet.
So can they blast it then?
There's
No.
nothing to blast.
Ah,
This bill-
gotcha.
So it's already on.
Not
So
in
when
committee.
you blast something, you blast it from a committee up to the House floor. It's
Right.
already there, but it
Right.
says do not pass.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, and with that, we have a caller who wants to visit with you, but we're up against a break. Austin Knudsen is joining us. Dave, we're going to get to your call. Plus, we have one line open at 721-1290. Coming right back. Hey, it's Talk Back, and it's Monday, and joining us on the telephone, Speaker of the House, Austin Knudsen, is spending very valuable time with us this morning. We appreciate that. So let's get back to the phone and say good morning to Dave. Dave, you're on with Austin Knudsen. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Could you tell me more about these 70,000 people who I guess are not insured now? Are they underemployed, or what's their situation?
I can't give you specifics about them, Dave. Honestly, we're not sure if 70,000 is the correct number. When we were talking about Medicaid being expanded in 2000, during the last election cycle, through the referendum process, Frankly, the fiscal note was a lot lower. They were only talking about 20,000. Now that we're talking about a bill in the legislature, suddenly now it's 70,000, and a lot more money. So, we're not exactly sure legislatively where the right number is. It's coming out of the same governor's budget office, but is the population somewhere in between there? Is it south of 70? Is it north of 70? We don't really know.
Do you know who came up with the number?
I didn't catch that. I'm sorry, my phone.
Do you know who came up with the 70,000 number?
I think that came out of the governor's office of budget and planning.
Okay, Dave, go ahead.
Yes. Now, they obviously don't have insurance, can't afford it, so they can't afford medical bills when they get sick either. So, who's paying their medical bills now? If they can't afford insurance
there. So right now, actually, by our figures, a large percentage of this group does qualify to go on the federal exchange under Obamacare, which is, that's kind of a head scratcher for us. Why are we talking about expanding state Medicaid coverage to a population that we know is in that poverty, that income level of 100% to 138% of the federal poverty level? That population qualifies to go on the federal exchange and get subsidized federal insurance. So that's a threshold question for us. Why are we wanting to provide alternative state coverage with an inferior product? Even former Governor Brian Schweitzer admitted that Medicaid is a broken system and provides a much inferior product than private insurance.
Well, not only that, Austin, from what I understand, that the numbers of reimbursement from the federal government for Medicaid keep shrinking year to year. So, as you had mentioned at the outset of the program.
It does, and coupled along with that, that creates the problem of, now you've got doctors in the state of Montana who just flat are refusing to take more Medicaid patients. They get paid less and less every year for those Medicaid patients. Where's the incentive for these doctors to accept, suddenly this new population of 70,000 more Montanans that we're going to throw on the Medicaid rolls?
So, Dave, anything?
Just really quick, the second portion of Dave's question, which I think is a good question, how are these people getting covered now? How are they getting medical care? These people are getting medical care. Hospitals do provide care to people when they walk into the emergency room or whatever the case may be in Montana. This idea that people are not receiving medical care is just not true.
There was one case that I heard about. It's kind of an odd case. A woman has diabetes really bad. She can't work because her legs aren't working for her, but she can't afford insurance or the medication because she's not working. It's sort of a catch-22. And I'm wondering, how would we deal with this?
Well, now, Dave, hold on. And Austin, please correct me if I'm wrong here. If she's not working, if she doesn't have an income, then doesn't she already qualify for Medicaid, Austin?
Yeah, she probably already qualifies. And if she doesn't, she'd be in that population. We'd be looking to try to get covered under the Republican plan. Because like I said, we do recognize that there are populations of people in Montana that are not being covered, and should be, and we recognize that they need a hand up, and that's what we're trying to do. What we have a problem with is just this blanket expansion of a bloated, poorly delivered product in the state of Montana that's funded with federal money.
Hey, Dave, we're going to let you go. Thanks for the call, and let's get Tyler on the line. Tyler, you're on with Austin Knudsen. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Speaker.
Good morning.
My question to you was military. You mentioned earlier that you want to scoop up some military veterans to put them in that group of 70,000. My question to you is, what can Medicaid offer veterans that the VA can't? And honestly, it's just a enrollment acceptance would be more than the VA is doing in a lot of cases. But why would a veteran go to Medicare? Sorry.
Sure, Tyler, and thanks for the question. And again, I'm going to have to apologize to some extent because I'm not the expert in this area. I mean, this is probably one that we should probably get Representative Whittick to come on because I think that's in his bill, House Bill 544. Representative Whittick is a veteran and has dealt with a lot of these issues a lot, and I know he's really up to speed. From 30,000 feet, I think there have been some real problems with some of our Montana veterans getting coverage with the VA. I know there's been a lot of problems with some delivery at the VA system, but
we had Representative Fred Thomas on our show not too long ago, and he's involved somehow with this bill, and he talked to us a little bit about it. He's also friends with Nancy Balance, so maybe that's where the connection is.
Senator Thomas is part of the Medicaid working group, which I candidly admit I am not. And Tyler, I don't mean to evade your question. It's a great question. I don't have the answer to it right now. I have to get somebody else on.
From what we heard in that discussion, first two things, it wouldn't be involved in the 70,000. We're talking about two different bill sets. What it was, I think it's a small amount of money that would go towards helping vets that had too long of waiting lines or couldn't get care through the normal channels at the VA to help expedite the process of care for them. That was basically the idea, as far as I understood it.
I think they were called choice cards, and well,
I believe that's a different system.
But I remember talking with Monty Turner though out of Mineral County. The VA had said, if they can't get in to see the VA or they've been waiting for a certain period of time, that they can go to their local, especially folks in rural areas like Superior or whatever, that they can go and use these cards to get care from physicians who are not affiliated with the VA and then be reimbursed by the VA. And I realize that's a different program, but it is available out there.
Well, I mean that's certainly an issue. Like in my district, I clear up in the northeast corner of the state. I mean the nearest VA hospital is in Miles City. And I've got certain constituents. They're being required to travel to the VA clear over here at Fort Harrison and Helena.
Wow.
That's a 500-plus mile trip for a lot of my constituents that are veterans that would rather just go into the local hospital 20 miles down the road and get care.
Yeah, well, we're up against a break. We're going to come right back. Austin Knudsen joining us. We have a Facebook post as well, and we have two lines open for you if you'd like to comment or talk with Austin. He's the Speaker of the House. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us on Talkback this morning. We're rapidly running out of time for Speaker of the House, Austin Knudsen. Mr. Speaker, let's get Emmett on real quickly. Emmett, what's your question for Speaker Knudsen?
Oh, it's not really a question, but, it's just some observations. I am for completely expanded Medicaid for, 70,000, just completely expanded, because even if you're working, like I've said this before, I've had this conversation, last week, we were discussing this, but people in Montana really are struggling. Even if they're working and they're quote-unquote above the poverty line, they still can't afford insurance even on these quote-unquote exchanges, and they can't afford the doctor bills. And they either rely on charity care or they have to go without. And it really would benefit a lot of families. And, as far as the poverty in Montana, I've seen in the rural areas, with all due respect to Montana, I think it's a beautiful state, but there you see a lot of broken down trailers and run down this, and people really, especially in rural areas, are really struggling out here, and it would really benefit so many people. It's a hand up. It's not a handout. It's not welfare. I think medical assistance and Medicaid is really helps a person be healthy and stay alive. It's not fear of death, as some have said, but what it is we all want and need medical care. It's a right, not a privilege just for the wealthy. So I'm glad you have your own plan, but I really support absolute expanded Medicaid for everybody, and it's very sad a lot of doctors won't take new Medicaid patients.
Let's let him answer that.
All right.
Thanks for the call, Emmett. So go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, Emmett. And certainly that's a sentiment that we hear in this building as well. I think one of the unfortunate side effects of Medicaid has become that it has become a form of welfare. Whether it certainly was not intended to be that. When you look at the original, the enabling legislation for that, and it's full of good intentions. But even the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has recognized that with full-scale expansion in all the states, they have predicted there will be a further slump in the workforce, meaning there will be more people who will elect to just completely drop out of the workforce and not look for a job. And that's our concern. We recognize that there are people that need help, and we want to help those people. But it's putting 70,000 more people on the Medicaid rolls to make those lines longer and make that delivery of services even longer. Is that the right answer to help the targeted people that really need the help? I don't think it is.
Okay.
We also have a question on Facebook from Susie. She says, why, when there was an overwhelming number of proponents for the Medicaid expansion bill heard on Friday, 6 hours and the only opponents were from the outside group Americans for Prosperity, did the members of the panel not listen to any of it? My goodness, the Chamber of Commerce and hospitals all over the state and in small communities are for expansion. And it is an economic driver for our state. I suppose you will tie this to tax cuts Republicans want in the end? ?
Well, first of all, I'll respond to the only opponents were from Americans for Prosperity. I mean, that's just a silly piece of rhetoric that I don't even think is worthy of responding to. There are lots of opponents to this, and we've got polling from registered voters in the state of Montana that shows us that, honestly, guys, less than 1% of the Montana voting population thinks this is an issue. This is not something that all Montanans want. That's just patently not true. Now, is there a vocal minority who shows up at the Capitol because they live here in Helena and line up at the podium to testify? Yeah, they do. That is not indicative of the state of Montana. It's a big state. A lot of people can't afford to drive over here to Helena to come testify. So, yeah, I mean, there were somewhere around 80 proponents and somewhere around a dozen opponents. But, that is not the way to make policy in the state of Montana. That's not a good driver of law in the state of Montana. I can fill a bus up just as quick as somebody else can.
Now, Austin, I understand you have to leave here pretty quick, so...
Real quick, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the veto. Do you think this will come back in any kind of a deal to try to get some tax cuts for the state of Montana?
Well, I'd like to see it. We're talking about a veto override shortly here. I think this is something that we need to talk about. The governor has for the last two sessions insisted on a $300 million budget surplus according to his revenue numbers. We're going to have it. Why not give a little bit of that back to the people that gave him that budget surplus? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Sure.
So hopefully I'd like to see some of that money go back to the taxpayers.
Well, Austin, I know you have to run. You got people lined up to visit with you, and thank you for the time you spent with us. We appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck, and please let us know how things are going.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, Speaker of the House, Austin Knudsen. I'm sorry he had to go. So we'll take as many calls as we can. We can continue to comment on this. We'll take a quick commercial break and come right back after this. Hey, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. We apologize. Speaker of the House Knudsen could not stay with us for the entire hour. He had people lined up outside his office to visit with him on legislative stuff. So we apologize for not having him on the whole hour. Eric, thanks for holding. You're on Talkback. Go ahead.
No problem. The more money you pay into federal and state governments, the less prosperity will be in the free market. Because people would use that money for other purposes, and when they can't use it for the purposes they intend, but it's being controlled by someone else, it takes away their freedom. And the money collected by taxes or in taxes by Montana and the federal government does not belong to the legislators. They're merely stewards. As a good steward, the money should be used to protect the rights of all, and that's the whole basis for our system of government, is that governments are established by the people to protect individual rights. And if you take money from one person and give it to another, that is not protecting anyone's rights. It's robbing one person and giving it to another. And the comment that I made last week on the fear of death, this is not necessarily an attitude in my mind. It's what they're peddling from above. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks for your call, Eric.
All right. Now, in conjunction with what Eric just said. We had an interesting Montana Economic Minute today.
Yeah.
From Patrick Barkey, and may I be allowed to play it here? I think it's pretty interesting. It's indicative of what he's talking about.
Peter, I will remove my hand from your board and allow you to play whatever you like.
All right. I always like to ask permission. We're a team. We're a team here. Okay, here we go. This is today's Montana Economic Minute.
This is the Montana Economic Minute.
The Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858 had a 2-hour format. Political ads on TV today unfold in 30 seconds. So it is that political positions on the economy now revolve around a single-syllable word, jobs, which is okay except for one thing. It doesn't advance our knowledge of how to support their creation. That's unfortunate because that ignorance has helped support some very dubious notions. One is public sector job creation. Levying taxes, which are compulsory, to pay for public sector jobs may often be good policy, but it's not job creation. Not when you account for the jobs those tax dollars might have supported if they stayed in people's hands. Job growth ultimately comes from activities that create value. New hiring is the end of a long causal chain. It starts with ideas, investment, implementation, and markets. Employees are a cost to companies, after all, so turning their efforts into revenue is the key. I'm Patrick Barkey.
Brought to you by the University of Montana.
So there you go. That was today's program.
I was reminded of the story of Peter Pan, which, if anybody's watched it, anytime someone says, "I don't believe in fairies," another fairy dies. And if you don't clap loud enough, then that fairy is actually going to hit the grave. But maybe it's the same way with jobs. Every time a politician says the word jobs, another job dies, unless there's a rousing applause afterwards.
I don't know. Let's. Did you have a Facebook comment? Or are we going to Dave?
We do.
All right,
we do have lots of Facebook comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Susie says her son was there at the hearing on Friday, and she says that he said that what happened was despicable, and that I guess this is what a majority can do, but it is not what is good for the people of Montana. She references a Missoulian editorial in the Missoulian today, talking about who the 70,000 people are. I looked up that editorial, by the way. The first one, it's called "Who is Being Left Out," and the author is left out of health coverage, and the author is Sue Hansen. The first one on the list is young adults who are just getting started. Approximately 11,000 people, 19 to 24 years old, don't have an option for affordable coverage. Now, maybe I'm wrong here, but isn't that the group that got extended time to be on their parents' plans?
Yep.
So how many forms of double coverage do we need?
It's up to age 26, but I'm not sure if there's a caveat if those kids have to be in school.
Yeah. What if you don't like your kids? Is there a parental love? Is that required to receive the coverage?
I don't know.
You can't play your music too loud in the basement clause?
Whatever.
All right, let's go to callers.
All right, let's Dave, good morning. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Yes, about government money being a waste. A lot of times in history, going way back, government money has been in the forefront of technology. It has propelled, sometimes invented technology that created many jobs. Example being the computer. It was created by a government program for the government, and look what it's led to.
Well, the internet is certainly a government invention
Right.
for the military. Yeah.
Even more important than government for creating new stuff is war. If you really want some new ingenuity, have another war.
Right. Let's face it, the Wright brothers invented the airplane, but the first 5 airplanes he sold were to the government. Government propels technology. It is the receiver and the pusher of technology.
Some forms of technology. I would not say the government is the tip of the spear when it comes to technological development, though. In some things, yeah. I mean, when it comes to data collection and processing, when it comes to things that are used for war that can later be turned into private enterprise things, yeah, you have a good case there. Yeah. Obviously, space program.
And, of course, what would we do without Tang?
Yes, and the wheel, it may not have been invented by government, but I bet you the wheel was first used in war, and the first assembly line was produced to make the wheel.
Well, perhaps the wheel was used for helping Og take his fresh mastodon to market.
It's possible. And government.
I mean, the first steel was used to make spears and swords. I mean, it's government has been at the forefront of technology from the beginning.
All right, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. 721-1290. Always different perspectives on this show. That's cool. 721-1290 is our number. We're coming right back after this 1-minute timeout. And I guess the rest of the show is open phones.
Heck yeah.
8 whole minutes.
Woohoo!
So we'll be right back. Got so busy, I've neglected to get my music. All right, so there we go. We have about 8 minutes left in the program. So,
yeah, some more Facebook comments. Elena says, ever since the feds got involved with our healthcare costs and regulations have skyrocketed. Same with drugs, same with education, land use, air, water, etc. Exactly where in the Constitution are these delegated duties of the federal government? Susie says that in response to what our guest, Austin, said, that the people that were there at the hearing came from all over Montana, not just Helena. And she says that we may need some of that surplus, referring to the tax, potential taxes back to the public. We may need some of that surplus for fighting fires this summer. This dry weather is supposed to continue. I'd rather have the money in the bank than get a little refund back. Just saying. And actually, from what I could tell, Sue, I've been talking with hydrologists and meteorologists over at the weather service. We haven't had all that dry weather. Yeah, we didn't get a lot of snow, but our water table is apparently higher than average, and the amount of hydration out there is most of the rivers were higher than normal, according to the guy I took to. It just hasn't fallen in the form of snow.
However, in the last week or so, that has changed. And I'm going to be calling Ray Nicholas later today.
Oh,
to
it
find
changed.
out. Yeah, because it's been drying out rapidly all over the state. So,
Where did you hear that?
Well, was it the AP story? Hang on.
Well, he's got to go down to the dumpster.
Please stand by.
We got
the dumpster's in my bag. All right, here we go. It says Montana snowpack percentages have dropped below normal for the second straight month. Basins west of the Continental Divide saw snowpack levels decline by 9 to 16% during the month of February.
Well, that's different than hydration. Yes, I agree with you that it's not in the form of snow.
All right.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of snow, clearly, compared to February last year.
Hydrologists say, however, that snowfall is still common in March, April, and into May. West of the Divide, however, he said reservoir storage is still above average.
There we go.
So there you go.
John's point remains. AP did not defeat John's point.
Well, we'll try to get some actual numbers for you as we go here.
So crazy stuff. How much time do we have? We have time to play any of my fun cuts?
4 minutes, yes.
Okay, here's a good one. So there was an interview with President Barack Obama over the weekend.
Right.
And they asked him when he had heard about the email scandal.
Yeah.
And I made a joke about this earlier on the show, but over and over and over again, whenever there's some horrible thing that's going on in government.
Sure, yeah. IRS scandal.
IRS scandal,
Benghazi.
Benghazi scandal. Every time the president responds by saying, I read about it in the paper. When did you first know? I read about it in the paper just like everybody else. Well, guess what happened when it came to the Hillary scandal?
Right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
The same time everybody else learned it through news reports.
Were you disappointed?
Let me just say that Hillary Clinton is and has been an outstanding public servant. She was a great Secretary of State for me. The policy of my administration is to encourage transparency, and that's why my emails, the BlackBerry that I carry around, all those records are available and archived, and I'm glad that Hillary is instructed that those emails that had to do with official business need to be disclosed.
Well, you say that you have the most transparent administration ever. You said it again just a couple of weeks ago.
It's true.
How does this square with that?
Well, I think that the fact that she's going to be putting them forward will allow us to make sure that people have the information they need.
All right.
When was the time you first heard you had the most transparent government ever? Well, I read it in the newspaper along with you, sir. That's when I heard about it.
All right, let's get Roger.
It's got to be true. I was in the newspaper.
Roger, good morning.
Just a couple of things. First off, on transparency,
Surely.
I think the president was the one that sealed all his information, personal information, as an executive order. So much for transparency.
Are you talking about his college transcripts and stuff?
Whatever, yeah. The second thing is on the fire stuff. it's interesting that there is like the military industrial complex. There's also a fire industrial complex, and that we when we're talking about fires in the springtime, and we're talking mostly about fine fuels. Everybody says, "Oh my God, it's drying out, and it happens pretty quick." Well, if it rains, it undries pretty quick. So these little fires we're having around here, they're nothing significant. And people ask me, and I've fought fire for a long time. People ask me, "Well, how do you think the fire season is going to be?" And I always say, "I'll let you know in November."
Yeah, when it's over, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Every fire, it's harder to get a solid answer, a solid bet on what fire season is going to be like from anybody. It's even worse than the weather. Like the weather people will be like, "Yeah, I'll try to predict out past 2 weeks." But the fire people are like, "It looks like it's a very, very dangerous day today or a normal day today." They just look at the little grizzly bear chart.
Well, when you, and Roger, I'm sure you'll probably agree with this, when you look at the various levels of jurisdiction when it comes to fires, I mean, it's hard to know who to talk to get any information, whether it's Fed or state or USDA or NFL or CBS.
or I am going to call the NFL on Montana fire season.
So am I wrong on there or not?
Well, you're right, but the truth of the matter is, no matter who you talk to, the fuels and the fuel accumulations out there is what determines how bad the fire is going to be. And when it comes right down to it, because of the lack of forest management over the last 15 and 20 years, a lot of it due to budget, but most of it due to lawsuits, we have much more fuel out there. And in the firefighting world, it's the heavy fuels. It's stuff that gets dry and stays dry for a long time, especially when we're talking about higher elevation stuff like in Lodgepole, where the temperatures up there, the seasons, they stay moist and then they stay cold for a long time. And so a lot of that material,
hey Roger,
it doesn't rot.
I'm sorry to do this to you. We're completely out of time, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call. Eric, I'm sorry we couldn't get you on. What's coming up tomorrow, John?
We'll be speaking with Jim Ramsey about family counseling in Missoula.
Okay. You guys have a great day. Enjoy this beautiful sunshine. We'll see you tomorrow.